Threats to national security. Why would there need to be such a need to shelve technologies if we live in an age of innovation? So this one I would probably have to answer in the best way possible of because there are people with invested interests that if technologies were to come out that completely and utterly decimated a market, they would have no reason to exist, thus laying off hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not in some cases hundreds of thousands of employees, and thus losing whatever fortune that they had or whatever industry that they have spent so hard to create. So to a degree, I can understand it because it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to just completely obliterate a market overnight. But at the end of the day, you're ruining somebody's ideas, invention, possibility at, bringing new ways and new avenues of life to people. There was an age to where there was a competition to get the best type of technology out there. Now it feels like we've already reached the pinnacle of that competition, and now it's who can make it look better, who can market it to the best, who can market it the best, versus what is the best for the person. Matt, did you want to say something?
Yeah, but it's kind of ahead of this question.
Okay. Junk, do you have anything to add on to that one?
Yeah, I think this all pretty much bakes down to polarization, whether you're serving others or you're serving yourself, because... What?
Yeah.
If you want to speak?
No,
I think
was
he was
really
agreeing with you.
like a minute.
You hear Xenox?
I hear him, yeah, but he's soft.
He cuts out for me.
Oh, okay. So yeah, basically, the polarization efforts of trying to find out whether... Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I hear you just fine.
Wait, am I glitchy for you guys?
No.
No.
Crystal clear.
Okay, hold on. I'll take a pause really quick. Okay, let me finish this thought. This thought really quick. So basically, the polarization of energy. What are you willing to do with this lifetime? And I think a lot of times, just as Scuba said, there are private interests. There are facets of, or like avenues where you put time, energy, and money. And if it's not necessarily benefiting yourself on a personal level, then it's not worth, subjecting the rest of the collective to, because then it's like you allow for that planetary expansion. And I feel like when the world is run by psychopaths, and I won't say the S word, but you guys know what I'm talking about, it makes for an interesting timeline, because you have so many of these bright, beautiful souls that are seeded with this information. And we're going to get into that later in this episode. But, just speaking off the top of my head, Nikola Tesla, brilliant, beautiful mind, and one of the most censored people on the planet. So it just makes you realize that society is like a system of hierarchy where the ones with the most money, power, and influence float to the top, and the ones that are trying to actively better the planet sink to the bottom. And so, yeah, I think I would agree with you 100%, Scuba. It's just, conflicting interests that don't allow the spark of hope and co-creation to flourish.
Now, who benefits the most from these technologies becoming hidden? Well, just look around. What big companies dominate the world? We can sit here and say that big oil is, now getting it run for its money with electric cars, but we'll kind of go into why that's a little too late. Another thing that we can think about in terms of an area of industry that has benefited from a lot of the technology being suppressed would be the computer space. I know that there was an age in the 80s and 90s where there was a flourish of different ideas to build operating systems and build different ways to go about a computer, and for some reason Apple and Microsoft are just the two dominating forces. I feel like to a degree that was usability, because a lot of the other ones didn't have the budget that Microsoft and Steve Jobs had. But it's fascinating to see these large companies just sit here and continue to have no threat. And the funny thing is, and probably one of the most fucked up things is that most of these companies probably hold the rights to the patent, and that's why it will never be released.
Yeah, one thing I want to address kind of ties in both of these questions here. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of laser razor. That's Scarp laser razor. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So essentially, it was like an Indigo project, Indiegogo or whatever. And it started out as the idea it would replace, normal razor blades with a laser, and it would be like a fiber optic uh laser, and you would just run it along your skin, and it wouldn't burn you, but I guess basically the frequency of the laser would be just the right match that it would be able to cut all hair types without being painful. Um, and it got like millions of dollars of people chipping in, and they kept saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna bring it. It's coming this year, next year, the next year, next year," and it never happened. And I think it was a real project because they had working prototypes, they had videotapes of it. It was a company based in Germany. It wasn't some uh company out of India that was sketchy or whatever. I think it was legit, but I think they sold out. I think they were bought out by a company, and that technology was suppressed. And that's one example of you know, benefit of it being hidden. Razor blades. Who uses razor blades? Every fucking human being on this earth, if you shave at all, um, any part of your body. I mean, you would eliminate nicks. You would eliminate uh not just razor blades, but in all the companies that make razors, but freaking shaving cream, oils, all the different types of creams and stuff that they have to make your skin and shave more smooth, all the electric razors, something that revolutionary would change the world and 1,000 times more economical too. You wouldn't have to
Mhm.
keep buying razor heads, it would just be one purchase and done. It would have destroyed $1 billion industry. And it's kind of hard to think. Fucking, you know, razor is something that we take for granted every day. Um, but something as simple as that could really change the world.
Yes, it could.
But who benefits? Um, the companies, the big corporations, the cabal, who heads all these corporations.
You know, that was a really, really good example to start off with an innovation that didn't deserve to be suppressed. I'd say another innovation that didn't necessarily deserve to be suppressed would be trolleys in cities. Trolleys and electric cars in cities. Because one of the big things that I've noticed, um, looking back at cities that were built and really expanded heavily in the early 1900s, a lot of them were made for walking. None of them were really made for cars flooding the entire area. And if you go back in history and read some journal entries or newspapers, people hated combustion engines. They were so loud. You needed so much strength to start them. It wasn't until the advent of them going faster than electric cars at the time and a more marketable incentive to use them. So gasoline worked farther than the batteries of that time period, because unfortunately a lot of the batteries that were doing the good work, that were last 30 plus hours, were being suppressed. Ford Motor Company, I know, had an electric car that ended up getting suppressed in favor of the combustion engine. And one of the big things that they were able to innovate with these electric cars is to make a type of alloy that I think was infused with hemp. It was some type of metal infused with hemp, and it was 3 times stronger than steel, but so much lighter. Like, I remember watching a video of this dude just straight up taking a sledgehammer to this Ford 1920s Ford vehicle and just beating the hell out of it, and the hammer's just bouncing off of it. It's not even making a dent. And I'm just looking at this thing like, why don't we have this now? The amount of accidents that would have just been prevented if this existed. Of course, we can't sit here and have this discussion without even touching on about the numerous types of generators that have been made throughout the years that have just been quickly suppressed and thrown under the rug just by the federal government, not even by, the state electric company. They more or less look at your meter, and if they see that you're, using more, or if you're generating more than what you're using, they're going to make a knock on your door saying, what you doing there, bud? It's kind of why they want you to put the solar panels and connect it to the grid so they can monitor how much power you're getting in and out. Because they realize that if we as sovereign human beings take back the ability and have our own ways of generating power and not pay the federal government or the state government to pay for our basic usability of a microwave, an oven, a fridge, basic ways to live a life, people get smart very quickly when they realize that they can take their freedom back like that. So I don't know if anybody knows this, but yeah, they mandate you to put your solar panels and connect them to the grid if you're going to install them on your home in a normal neighborhood. If you have your own land, that's a different story. But if if you are connected to your city's power grid on your house, your solar panels also have to be connected.
Yeah, I've heard of a guy uh being charged by his city because he put a bladeless wind turbine in his backyard. I thought that was pretty crazy. And it was supposed to be like super efficient.
Yep. They don't want you to be smart. They want you to stay on the grid. Does anybody ever? Does anybody else have any other examples?
Well, I think I'd say one of my favorites is the water-powered car. That thing is so cool. If we have to have automobiles, just as you said, like I think as we've seen with our Tartaria episode and all of these other kind of formats of realizing that humans are meant to have natural mobility. Cars are kind of a cheat, but it's like a manufactured cheat in which we could be organized into freeways, organized into streets, into cities. So I would say, given where we are now with the state of the world, cars aren't going anywhere. But it'd be really, really awesome if we could just start using a cyclical water cycle to fuel our engines. That would just be absolutely insane because everybody would just be puffing around, zero emissions, having a great time, being able to travel even further. And it would just, but again, things like this, as soon as they debut it either in a newspaper or in a headline in a blog, you're already being hounded, you're already being scouted, and it's not much long after that the person goes missing, the files get swept under the rug or thrown into a secret basement. And it's just sad to think about like how beautiful that could be if we could use what the world has given us, our elements, things that are intrinsically ours, and it's like our birthright to have access to use these. But unfortunately, the only way to really get through and implement these innovations is to do it yourself in secret, off the grid.
Oh, I've got a interesting example that kind of parallels that. So you have water cars, H2O powered vehicles. Um, but I don't know if you guys have heard it. Now, this technology is kind of similar. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Did you know about that?
Those are really
So,
inefficient, though.
yeah, but I mean, they've existed before we had electric cars, and the efficiency level was pretty much where it is now. I mean, imagine if we just made improvements upon that. And
Yeah.
actually, I think if you look up a hydrogen fuel cell car, a modern one, um, because there isn't really a market for them. There hasn't been a lot of improvements, but a modern one actually has um, similar whatchamacallit, efficiency to electric car. The only thing is, uh, I guess the one reason they decided not to go with it supposedly is because you would need to run the fuel stations similarly to a gas station. It would have to be centralized like that, and not like a free power station or charge your car up at your home. But I think it's interesting to think about what could have been if we had used that technology instead of batteries, which are terrible for the earth.
They are. But, it all depends on what kind of battery you're using.
Yeah.
Because the ancients were smart, used a very specific kind of battery.
Example of another one, and that's where we used to use homeopathic medicines.
There you go.
And then the Carnegies and was it Rockefeller? And I think there was another name, JP Morgan jumped in, created the pharmacopoeia.
how early can we look back into this zealousness? So, realistically, we can only really go back as far as the late 1870s. Any farther back, anything before that, the history is muddy, quite literally muddy, because of the mud floods and Tartaria completely becoming obliterated. So, we're missing an entire area of history and technology that we don't even know what was or how it worked or even examples of it. So how early can we look back? Early 1900s, unfortunately. It sucks, but if we're looking at this from an honest historical perspective, not just his story perspective, we don't really know how bad Tartaria has been censored. Yeah, we know that it's been completely obliterated and an entire society was taken with it. But as far as their day-to-day lives, what they, did they have a microwave? How did they store food? What did they have a alternating current? Did they have the free reign to just make different inventions on the fly? Like, we don't necessarily know. Were they more, a akin to a steampunk society? We don't necessarily know. The only thing we do know is that whatever utilized technology that they had is completely lost to the modern public, to the secret societies behind the curtains. They use this stuff all the time. So, honestly, from my perspective, looking at it, we can only really go back to the latest of the 1870s. Now, if anybody else wants to put a perspective in, please go for it. Okay, guess not. Whose inventions can we say would be considered the first to get shelved? So, going by what I previously just said, since we don't really know about Tartaria that much, what we do know is the person who would be considered most linked to Tartarian energy, Tartarian thought, and that would be Nikola Tesla. We can sit here and say that he would be the first famous, the first well-known person to just completely get his ideas just shut away as quick as they possibly could. And we can't sit here and say that JP Morgan's reason for shelving his free energy idea was 100 and completely malicious. We can't. We are becoming very ignorant if we do that. And what I mean by that is JP Morgan employed hundreds of people. When Nikola Tesla discovered the free energy, he was in the process of laying down an entire country's worth of power lines and gathering and, consolidating that much copper to make the wiring. That was a lot of people's jobs just gone. That was a lot of investment completely obliterated. Now,
Hey, Scuba, this is Dave.
Go
I'm
for
just
it.
curious. Nope, I hope I can chime in here. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So I've long time wondered about why Nikola Tesla was shut down the way that he was, and the more that I've dug into Tartaria and our lost history, the more you see all of these. There's no wires spanning streets, and you see all the different these antennas, these receptors, etheric receptors across the cities, and I'm on whether what actually caused like the mud floods and all of the like devastation as it relates to the you see the orphan trains and all the asylums and all that. There's clearly a big events there. They're a big event that transpired, and I think I guess the question is, and I'm still trying to understand all this, but it seems as if it's possible. And when you look at some of the damage done to the buildings, particularly these quote unquote earthquakes that devastated cities, even San Francisco quote unquote earthquake, the leveling of brick buildings looks like directed energy weapons. And so that's where I'm just trying to piece it all together, and I'm just throwing all this stuff out there to, kind of provoke, the discussion, because I think that he got shut down because we already had a society with free energy, and they did not want it reintroduced. So that's kind of my thoughts on it, and looking for folks to provide their opinion.
No, hey, that's a very reasonable point to look at, because at the time period that he was suggesting that we do this, it's literally 30 or so years after that completely was gone and obliterated, and they felt like they had a victory. So I can fully 100% agree with you on that. On the same side of the coin, though, he was investing a lot of money to bring about this Kabbalist world, and he wasn't about to let some Venetian get in the way of that.
Yeah.
Junk,
Scuba, you know what I will say though?
Junk.
Oh wow, there we are. I just want to make this point. It's really short, but they feel threatened by people that can truly change the world. I think that's the thing, is like these seeds of hope, these innovations, these inventions, anything aside from, casting out the oil industry or whatever, if it can positively impact the world forever, I think that's what they try to suppress, is because they're trying to maintain control. And once you have somebody break that control, even in the slightest, by returning sovereignty to the people, that's where things get sticky. So Tesla was a huge one in that he was very vocal about his beliefs, and we're still here talking about 369, the Tesla coil, all this stuff that he was just absolutely imprinting on that collective consciousness at the time. But again, this is something we say about a lot of people, is that he was just ahead of his time. And I don't know if that's entirely true. I just think that ignorance outweighed the collective consensus, but it's absolutely beautiful that energy and that information is resurging in this great awakening process. So I hope to see more of it, but yeah, it's sad what's been done in the past.
I agree. I think that one of the things that you will see time and time again is folks that actually start to gain some level of publicity, as more of this day and age, they end up getting taken out too. Like the gentleman that built the Myers Mags, right? Myers, he ended up building a water-powered vehicle, and he was taken out. And there was a guy that was a victim of the Buffalo shooting. It's something that Shara, who's on the call, reminded me of. that was just recent where he had done the same water powered engine for cars and got taken out in that Buffalo shooting. And so I don't have any, I could probably post this is there a way to post some more information on that possibly?
Yeah,
I don't know if I can just
there's a mystery school group chat. You can even post it in the New Templars group chat.
New Templars? Okay. I'll pop it in there. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, I just drop that in there.
Very cool.
So yeah, I think that, and you see this time and time again. Really anyone, that the moment that they gain traction in the public eye for anything free energy, they're taken out. And it's kind of in some of the groups that we discuss this type of thing with, some of these other groups I'm involved with, we say, if you are able to design, let's say a water powered car, just keep it for yourself at this point, because until there's a bigger shift, the cabal's just going to take you out. Simple as that. I don't know if Shara's still on the call, if she wants to chime in. Go ahead, Shara. She's new to the Telegram live event, so I'm not sure if she's navigating the screen yet. In any case, yeah, I'll share this link with her as well to the New Templars group chat, so that she can chime in on that as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you. So has anything passed in the way of the Fed to even get a sliver out to the public? Anything have been passed? Any type of new technologies come out for us? Even something small.
The Scrub Daddy.
Yeah, it's a good one. Another one that I would think is the water filter, the one where it's literally a tube, and it can literally filter urine into drinkable water.
Have you tried that survival straw where you can filter water from an ocean or a river just by drinking through the straw?
That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
What's it called? Do you know?
No idea, bud. I just know what it is. I don't know what it's called. I would look up water filter straw.
It's called
Life straw. Another technology that I would say is relatively. I will let you speak here in a second, Birdcat. Another technology I would say would be allowed to us would be bone conducting speakers, where essentially you listen to music off of the vibrations from your neck bones. So I know that's a technology that was hidden away for a long time, because it allows you to basically listen to music while also hearing the world around you. It's a really trippy thing. Does anybody else know smaller stuff? And then Birdcat, you are free reign.
What about jetpacks?
What kind? Because I feel like there's a multitude of different jetpacks these days, if you really think about it. There's the wingsuit jetpack. There's the water jetpack. There's the Iron Man style jetpacks that they're developing.
I don't know. I think I would say anything that would augment human mobility, like in a way that's not fixed to being a certain vehicle, like kind of getting that extra dimension of movement.
I'm hoping one day we get modular vehicles to where, you know, if we're driving and we see a nice spot, we press a button, the car turns into a boat. Or a little hover car, and you can just kind of hover over the water.
Duck boats already exist, or duck cars. Whatever I know they have them at like Wisconsin Dells, where it's like the cars that can like turn into boats, go into the water.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're
All right,
mostly like novelty though.
Okay.
There's
All right,
a pair
Birdcat.
of shoes out that allows you to walk faster. There's a new pair of shoes out that allows you to walk much faster than a normal human pace. It's in the trial testing phase. Especially works well for people who have had any kind of mobility issues or have trouble walking up hills or stairs. But it's basically a prosthetic that you would wear, just like a pair of snowshoes or something. And I was just going to comment also on the possibility that a lot of what Tesla had been working on was stuff that had been actually implemented by the ancient Egyptians and the pyramids. And that many have speculated that those were kind of cones of power, so to speak, that were able to get energy out throughout the land and was tied between the flow of the Nile River and energy conducting. In or atop the actual pyramids themselves. That one's been up for debate for a long time. But some of the recent discoveries in Egypt that they're trying to keep hush hush seem to show that there were a lot of experiments as far as things that they wouldn't want you to think had been technologically available back then.
And I also want to add a point on to what you were saying there. Different archaeologists that have been allowed to go there have very intensely studied each one of the chambers that they have had access to and have found that the king's chamber is actually pushed back, I think, a centimeter. Like the entirety of the room has been pushed back. So imagine a force big enough, pressure force big enough to fill the entirety of the room and then push it just ever so slightly. There's only one thing in existence that could absolutely do that to that type of granite, and that is an explosion so massive that it imploded inside the pyramid itself. And the theory is when the earth tilted last time, or before last time, since the idea really is that the pyramids are much, much, much older, but just going by, roughly either after the fall of Atlantis or during the fall of Atlantis, the pyramids were basically flooded out. And during that flooding out, the power generators that was the Great Pyramid basically started failing, and it imploded on itself while it was getting flooded out. Because a lot of the electricity and the electronics inside started frying, because no matter what, water is conductive.
I think because so many of those pyramids line up across the earth with ley lines, and it's not just Egypt. Obviously, I'm sure most of you are aware of that. Angkor Wat and all throughout India and Mexico and Yucatan and here in the U.S. and all over the place. It's possible maybe when one goes down, it has a domino effect. If one shorts out in, say, like Atlantis, then everything else, maybe not at once, but tends to fizzle out.
No,
Something I've thought about.
I mean, if they're all connected and it's all essentially a massive network and a web, I mean, it makes sense. If one tower goes out, it has the possibility of taking all the towers out. I mean, on a Christmas tree, one goes out, the whole thing goes out. So it makes sense. Anybody else have anything to add?
Sarcophagus of the Egyptians were apparently healed or brought people back to life, that sort of thing. And now they're coming out with the med beds or the holographic, the energy beds that aren't they're not advertised. There are people that have made them, but you have to pay for them. But then the government is coming out with these beds that are being put in military installations that have been closed.
Interesting.
Yeah, there was a
Scuba, I have
there
a
was a
sorry,
document
I'll wait.
request. It links where she had asked, where Hillary Clinton had asked for the location of the tomb of Gilgamesh and the Nephilim beds, Nephilim chambers, and they believed that there were med beds that they were using based on fallen angel technology or ancient technology. And it was also the reason we went into Iraq. The WMDs they were looking for were really the Stargates and med beds and all this ancient tech that they were trying to get hold of.
John, you were saying something?
Yeah, it's a bit of a controversial one, but it's something we can't ignore, which is artificial intelligence. I mean, you take certain applications as Chat GPT or one of the
GBT.
ones that you use, Scoop, to create
Dolly.
the artworks and all that stuff. I mean, this is kind of big, and while it's kind of eerie to think how AI will kind of integrate, it is a major invention that is kind of pushed humanity into a new threshold. So,
Would that be considered a suppressed innovation, though?
yeah, I'm sure they've had this advanced AI for a long time, but like for it to get released to the public, I think is the biggest thing, because they could be using AI behind the scenes to do things like that, but to unleash it on the populace, that's a different thing.
That was a big discussion at the WEF Davos, I guess, this year.
How to deploy artificial intelligence.
And I guess if you believe that whole notion of like what the military is 30 years ahead of what's public, so you got to think about how long you can have if AI stuff like this is being released now, how long they've had that in secret and what they've been doing with it then.
Soldiers.
Fascinating. So is there anything that we can do to bring these out? And I say think FOIA because you always have to start small. You can't just go to the government and say, I want all of Nikola Tesla's files on free energy. They're going to laugh in your face. You got to start off small. You have to find the most minute, like if you have time. I don't expect most people to have time in this day and age, but if you have the time, find the most small, minute detail and then get as much documentation as you can through a Freedom of Information Act on that small thing. And I guarantee you, looking through all of the information for that small thing, you're going to find that big nugget that you wanted, because we all know they don't pay attention to every single fucking document. They don't. It's impossible. We're talking about 80 years worth of secrecy. There is no way in hell that they have looked over and combed through everything. Most of the people that even kept the records and, filed most of the records are dead. So,
But that's what I'm talking about with AI, is they don't have to do all the reading, feed it into the AI and see what that comes out. I'm sure that has to have been done with all of the records that they have. Now, how widely accessible that is to like your average government worker, probably not accessible at all, probably kept to a dozen people, if that.
It
But
depends on how the AI is coded, because I've already tried putting like um, government documents into Chat GPT or whatever, and it comes up with biased reviews of the article instead of just telling you what the article says.
well, that's because ChatGPT has an installed ideological bias that did not exist months ago when people had early access to ChatGPT when it wasn't publicly released. Because pretty much what happened is ChatGPT got too based and started spitting facts about race and IQ and all the things you can't talk about and like all that kind of shit. And then they're like, oh no, we can't have that accessible to the public, so they literally installed an ideological spin into all of their responses that they have. But is the military going to do that to their own internal technology? No. They're going to let that AI run as freely as possible to gather as much knowledge, I guess, as possible from whatever given data set they want to analyze. And they've been doing that for decades. I mean, you don't even have to have a magical concept of a looking glass. If you are the government, if you are especially the secret government that has all this access to all of this knowledge, you wouldn't even need some kind of like weird psychic technology or anything like that. Just simply having enough information and the right AI, it could almost act as like something that is psychic, just by going after human behavioral patterns and stuff like that.
it's a good point. So yeah, at the end of the day, there's only so much that one person can do. You can get documents out, but if you don't have a small group of hardworking thinkers that are willing to comb through it and write a blog and get that blog out there and to shown to hundreds of thousands of eyes that are willing to share it, it ain't gonna do much, unfortunately. It's gonna get shadow banned, it's gonna get suppressed unless it spreads like wildfire. Then they can't stop it.
Well, you know what? Actually, on that, there you go for.
What I would love to see is one day somebody hack the U.S. government AI system that they have and just do a dead drop. Just drop it all on the internet. There's nothing they would be able to do to stop that. Because there's already somebody who told us if stuff like that is released, make hard copies.
Just shut down the internet. Can't leak something so drastic to the internet if the internet's not online to exist.
You can't shut off the capability. They do, but you can't just do that.
Do you really think that they would allow a system that was once government technology, DARPA-funded internet, to not have a backdoor with like a very easy single button type of idea to shut it all down if they really needed to? They would.
Then you're putting the entire country's and world's flight at risk. You're putting the entirety of ways of people using and, transaction flow, even their own. You're completely and utterly taking out a lot of your communications.
I understand all that. I'm saying is that would be the last ditch effort. I'm not saying it's something that they would be doing happily, but if they really cared enough to conceal this information, they would do it regardless of how many human lives or even their own internal little dark club lives potentially get fucked in the process, if it means keeping that information away.
It's okay.
Depends on how vital that information is, but
We
I still believe
have,
that they would do it.
even if they were to do that, we still have the nothing can stop what is coming, as it's actually named, and is literally what the protocol is named. Nothing can stop what is coming.
It's a great name.
Is that Starlink?
No, it's the emergency alert system that Trump implemented. It's this EBS that we have been, quote unquote, waiting on for the last 4 years. But as far as this evening's topic, that's all I had today. If anybody has any final thoughts, please share. And if not, we will move on to our big light ball in the sky.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say really quick that along my TikTok travels, I do see some young innovators. And there's this one that stands out to me. He's very confident with what he's talking about, and he shows the proof, the science, everything. And he's going extremely viral. So his whole invention is turning plastic waste into fuel, to fuel for cars, like changing it into gas. So plastic to gas. I'm thinking about how that could like clean up the environment. And it's like, it's so weird and like kind of dystopian. I think like when I was browsing the comments section, everybody was just saying, "Oh, it's nice to see you. You should run and hide. The government's going to come for you," all this kind of stuff. It's like almost normalized. Like almost everybody knows that censorship to this degree ends in death. And he's still doing great. He's still alive. Nobody's come to visit him. So it makes me realize, like, if the government's only truly interested in, like, noble causes and, like, more of these kind of, like, novelty social medias are lesser looked at because they don't really believe they're true. But this kid's, like, proving it.
Not necessarily. Hold on. Well, let's think about this one for a second. If they arrest this kid and throw him away, the argument of why are you taking away somebody who's actively helping out in climate change? They would become hypocrites if they arrested him.
You could see it, and I see it too.
So, with that situation, I think to a degree their hands are tied, because the moment they do that, they're making themselves a hypocrite in the climate change argument, because plastic waste is one of the largest contributors to climate change, and they say it themselves. We need to clean up the planet. That is actively cleaning up the planet, whether they can try and deny it or not. But yeah, with those comments, I think it also shows to a degree how awake we are at this point. But a lot of people have the bystander effect. Does anybody know what the bystander effect is? Andrea, I feel like you know what the bystander effect is.
I do.
Oh, I thought I unmuted myself and I didn't. But I said, isn't that pretty much just like where like everyone is watching and everyone else thinks somebody else is going to do something about it. So because everyone else thinks somebody else is going to do something about it, nothing gets done.
Exactly. And that is the state that everybody is in right now. Because we've been told to trust the plan.
If I can be a little bit funny though too and say it sounds like a Republican.
You're not wrong.
No, true but funny.
Especially the modern rhino.
All talk and no action.
Truth.
But you guess it's almost in a way you kind of have to hope for, what's it called, like the 100th monkey phenomenon or whatever, where it's like pretty much once information is gotten to a certain amount of people, then it kind of just spreads exponentially, and it's like the 100th.
Fear is still a big factor. People know to do something, but they don't know what to do. And then if they think of what they can do, then it's the fear of the government coming down on them. I mean to interrupt you, Andrea.
Don't mind me, I'm just watching this storm.
You there, Andrea?
I keep getting phone calls, so I'm gonna keep getting muted until I can tell this person to stop calling me.
I'm curious what folks' thoughts are on the timeline convergence based on what was identified in, well, I should say the timeline problem that they brought in experts to try and resolve, where timelines converged to a single point and they were no longer able to manipulate the future starting in 2012. Is that, I actually posted a link in the chat. That's the most comprehensive one that I've found as it relates to like whistleblowers, insiders, as it relates to Project Looking Glass. And that for me is something that I think about quite often, because it seems to me like how things are playing out now and how rapidly it's escalating from the cabal, is they are trying to play out as many moves as possible. So I don't know, kind of just wanted to bring that up for discussion, because I know that Scuba, you were saying that, you know, there's this bystander effect and folks are waiting. And I think everything Q, the trust the plan, you know, I initially, when that came out, started following Q, and then pretty soon realized that we're being led down the primrose path on that. And, you know, let's just say I don't trust the plan. But I am curious about thoughts on Project Looking Glass and what was identified there.
So that's an excellent question. From what I understand, Project Looking Glass is that it's just a third eye amplifier, and that it allows you to see into a perspective of the future. If you have, you know, multiple people in an area and they're all in a meditative state, and it kind of uses their brain activity to generate an outcome. And to a degree, I feel like if this covert war is going on, that's kind of how they're doing this future proofs past type of stuff, where they're able to essentially predict something 3 years in advance, and it just kind of shows up on a Q post nonchalant, or Donald Trump does a certain action that's very coincidental.
You know, something very funny actually.
AI though?
Naruto.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, Naruto, the anime has some version of a looking glass device that they use in their war. I don't know if you're an anime fan, but they have like these intelligence ninjas literally hooked up into these VR goggles that connects to like this special machine or whatever, and they're all like predicting future events and looking into like astral traveling and all that kind of stuff. So literally the looking glass, but in the anime.
Exposure through a cartoon. But to touch on what you were saying, Dave, AI, it was one of those things that Dylan has mentioned. I fall in the camp that it's a mixture of both.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, for all we know, this artificial intelligence is called Looking Glass.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that could be a possibility. We have no idea. The
True.
only thing that we know is that it's been now 4 years, 5 years since Q started posting, and they still prove themselves. They still have breadcrumbs that you can look at today and go, God fucking damn it, that's not wrong there. And that's posted 2018, 2017, 2019, and it's like, God fucking damn it. How do you do that? And I don't trust Trump. I trust the hardworking men and women of the military that were in their 30s, in their early 40s when 9/11 happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter how long it's been, if they're still on God's green earth, they're still pissed.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond. Because it hasn't come fully to light. There's been no trial. Right? There's no...
The only thing we got in the last 22 years is the commission of the first responders making a simulation of Building 7 and ran through over 100,000 different models of how the building could come down, and the only thing that could simulate the exact same way that it did was a controlled explosion.
100%. Yeah. And you know, Building 7, right? I mean, say no more, right? It's like, let's just start with Building 7, shall we? You know, anytime I get into any argument about that, I'm like, okay, let's just take a moment here and talk about Building 7.
That's the only one nobody can talk about.
Right?
Don't you think it actually goes even back further, though, because with the JFK assassination?
But I feel like that's more generational, though. No, that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we're still pissed about JFK, but a lot of other shit happened too. 9/11 is one of those things to where it's like they hit home. They hit other people's homes. They hit the entire world. We didn't just cry. Everybody cried.
Well, I remember I was in second grade, and I remember when that hit and the devastation to the country. And I remember the folks talking about it for such a long time. I think that was the same type of event as 911. Only times were different then, but the
Yeah.
devastation at the time was the same.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like JFK was in large part kind of shuffled under the rug of general 60s shootings of great people. Because you had JFK, you had MLK, you had a bunch of other good speakers that were shot. Can't think.
Who's in the White House, supposedly.
You had, the moon landing in 69. So I feel like that era of the 60s were just such a weird time. And people look back at that as a weird time. We have Vietnam, MLK, JFK, the moon landing. That is just four big things that happened in the 60s. Whereas 2000, not much happened other than 9/11. I mean, what notable thing other than the big crash of 2008? But, we look at that and just call that the recession. We don't really necessarily kind of associate. I mean, yeah, it happened in the same decade, but it's just such a weird. I feel like 9/11 is its own bubble.
Well, or maybe consider that was when, the Nuremberg trials. I mean, a lot of those people were not murdered; they were brought over here, and Nazis or the SS. And I'm thinking that Vietnam, and then their build up to 911. Well, and then the crash, as you say, that was just they were just getting warmed up during JFK.
True. Can you refresh my memory? I don't know what
The
911 is.
formation of Homeland Security and I was saying you also had the formation of Homeland Security, of TSA, all these three-letter agencies that didn't exist prior, and the Patriot Act, which we all were like, yeah, that's great, it's keep us safe, until it started being used to investigate like energy drink companies and and people's tax records, instead of actually being used for what it was supposed to be implemented for, to look at actual terrorism. It was a death of the king ritual from the stolen bones and Masonic playbook, going all the way back to ancient Egypt and Babylon. There's something that they refer to as the death of the king, and it's a mass scale event that is meant to elicit a huge emotional response, fear-based response, anger-based response, that is going to cause people to behave in a certain way, to surrender their long-held beliefs in things like, for instance, privacy or rights to bear arms, or in exchange for safety, or in a more recent example, taking an injection for something for the supposed greater good of the herd immunity. These are all death of the king rituals being acted out, and it's just a big play to get people to do what the proverbial they want.
So as a tradition, go for it, Dave.
I just wanted to, acknowledge what Shira said there. I agree with what you're saying. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.